Hello, and welcome back to Noir Lullaby. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I love reading every single one. If you enjoy chilling tales that sing like a dark lullaby, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Now, get comfortable, dim the lights if you dare, relax your mind, let the outside world fade away. And let's begin. Story 1, Hello. It is nice to meet you, even if we are only meeting through words on a screen. That may sound too casual, but I could not think of a better way to introduce myself. A simple greeting feels right when two strangers are connected by nothing more than digital text. The whole idea is amazing when you stop and think about it. We can take thoughts and emotions from inside our minds, turn them into coded information, and send them across the world with a click or a tap. Electrical signals carry pieces of us through the largest and most complicated network humanity has ever created. You do not find that impressive? I suppose most people do not anymore. When I was young, the internet felt impossible. It seemed like some kind of magic. I guess every great invention becomes ordinary once enough people grow up with it. The impossible becomes useful, then common, then boring. The internet has only grown larger and more complex since then. It was a very different place when I first discovered it. Even at that time, the earliest days were already ending. But the part of the world where I lived was always a little behind. New technology reached us slowly. To me, it was new. I grew up with a keyboard beneath my fingers and a mouse in my hand. The internet showed me things I never would have seen otherwise. It opened a window beyond the small, quiet place where I lived. Music and games were pleasant distractions. But knowledge was what truly pulled me in. Every question led to another page, another stranger, another idea. It gave me more than information. It gave me freedom. I could meet people from places I would never visit. I could speak to someone on the other side of the world without knowing their real name, their face, or anything about their life. We were anonymous names floating through cyberspace. But behind each name was another human being. For many of us, that was enough. It was comforting, especially for people who found the real world difficult. People like me, I am scared. I have always been scared. Daily life terrifies me. People terrify me. There are very few moments in my life when I have not felt afraid, nervous, guilty, or certain that something terrible was about to happen. But online, the fear was quieter. There, I could exist without feeling the weight of other people's eyes. I could speak without watching their faces change. I could leave whenever things became too much. For a long time, I did not understand that anything was wrong with me. I assumed everyone felt the same. Everyone overthought every word they spoke, did they not? Everyone lay awake, remembering small mistakes from years ago. Everyone was controlled by doubt, guilt, and fear. Right? Even now, I am not completely sure. I am more aware of myself than I used to be, but sometimes awareness only makes things worse. Ignorance can be a kind of peace. Still, the internet has always felt comfortable. A screen gives me somewhere to place my thoughts instead of whispering them into an empty room. So this is the message I am sending to you, whoever you may be. Hi, I hope you are doing well. If you are not, I am sorry. I hope every dark tunnel has some light waiting at the end. I hope every night is followed by a morning warm enough to make the darkness feel distant. I hope even the most overused words of encouragement can help someone who needs them. Sometimes a grand idea can change a life. Sometimes it takes only a simple sentence. Other times, it takes something painful enough to knock a person out of the small world inside their head. We are selfish creatures. Most of the time, we think mainly about ourselves. I would like to say that this is not our fault. When we suffer, we turn inward. When we are happy, we often do the same. Our feelings become walls that block the rest of the world from view. We build emotional shelters and sit inside them, protecting whatever state we have become used to. Even pain can become comfortable when it is familiar. The same is true of joy. People cling to their greatest victories because they are afraid of returning to ordinary life. Those trapped in the middle may be the blindest of all. They have not seen the deepest darkness of the human soul, but they have also never received the rare prize that society holds above our heads. Success, recognition, purpose. We are told that these things are waiting if we behave correctly and keep moving in the approved direction. Then there are the broken people, the confused ones. They see everything. Once the veil is gone, it becomes difficult not to notice that the entire system is built on nonsense. Human society is a strange machine powered by selfishness and suffering. A small number of genuinely selfless people hold it together alongside many others, whose kindness happens to match something they already want. It is a miracle that humanity has survived this long. When even the simple right to exist can become the subject of an argument, what are we doing? What are we trying to become? What could possibly be the point? That is a funny word. Point, purpose, God, in God's name, people say. Which God? I suppose the most familiar answer in my part of the world would be Yahweh, one of the most famous beings in human history, though people rarely use the name directly. Humanity created names for the mysteries it could not understand. We needed to divide the unknown into pieces and place each piece inside a box. We imagined beings behind thunder, death, birth, love, time, and the stars, because not knowing was unbearable. We are fragile in that way. The mind can only react to what it understands. It cannot choose the best move if it does not know the board or the rules of the game. Maybe there is no true action inside us. Maybe every decision is only a reaction. We react to the people around us. We react to expectations. We react to laws, traditions, fear, hunger, and the instincts that once kept our ancestors alive. Those instincts remain inside us even though the world around them has changed. The poorest react in whatever way allows them to survive. The most powerful react to their desires and their ancient need for control. Everyone in the middle tries to avoid being crushed between the two. Even the people who built the board are reacting. Everyone is trying to preserve something. For one person, survival may mean keeping a roof over their head. For another, it may mean protecting an empire. The scale is different, but the need beneath it is the same. Preserve what you have. Prove that you matter. Even empathy may contain selfishness. Helping another person can make us feel safe, useful, moral, or seen. We want proof that our presence has meaning. We want proof that we are here, that we exist. We do exist, do we not? If everything else can be questioned, surely the self must remain. Religion might fail us. Philosophy might collapse into endless arguments. Science might reveal a reality too strange for the human mind. Madness may destroy the pattern we thought we saw around us. But even then, there is still the observer. The self. Are we everything that exists? That sentence sounds wrong. Are we all that are? No. Are we all that is? That sounds better, but why? The word "are" suggests movement through time. It suggests beings who exist now but may change or disappear. The word "is" feels permanent, static, untouched by time. A constant. I do not know. I have already wandered away from my point. Hello again. Wait, we have already met. Have we not? You and I are not complete strangers anymore. You have read my thoughts, though I doubt that means you know me. How much truth can anyone find inside the unfiltered rambling of a mind that does not always understand itself? I do not know who you are. You do not know who I am. There is something poetic about that. Two lives that may never have touched in any other way have become connected through a piece of text. Billions of people have lived, and billions more may come after us. Out of all those lives, all those places, and all those possible moments, you found this. Is that fate? Probably not. Still, the odds are interesting. How can you understand someone who does not understand himself? Who am I? I cannot answer honestly. Can you? Who are you? Would you answer with your name? That was given to you by someone else. Would you describe your nationality, your birthplace, your family, or your job? Those are circumstances. Would you point to your body? Are you the atoms and particles that form your flesh? Are you the biological machine carrying your mind? Your meat mech, as someone with less dignity might call it. There, are you satisfied? Perhaps you are not your body at all. Perhaps you are your consciousness, the silent observer sitting somewhere behind your eyes, controlling the biological suit you wear in the physical world. Of course, that is not completely accurate. The electrical activity in your brain is physical. Electrons have mass, even if the amount is tiny. But calling the mind a ghostly pilot sounds more dramatic. Ask people whether they are their body or their mind, and you will receive many different answers. The question itself may be flawed because the person answering is trapped inside the very thing being examined. The observer cannot step outside the observer. Did you know reality might be a hologram? That sounds like one of those terrible online headlines. 10 unbelievable facts that will destroy your mind. Number 6 will make you lose control of your bladder. What has the internet done to us? But listen, not to the bladder part. Sentient experience depends on sensory information. Electrical signals carry messages about the world into the brain. Light strikes our eyes and forms an image of reality. But that image is only an interpretation. We do not see the world as it truly is. We see the small part of it our bodies can process. Science is our best method of describing what we observe, but every description is still made through human senses and human tools. How would we know what lies beyond them? We understand the universe through what we can experience. What do we call the things we cannot experience? Dark matter, perhaps. Mystery solved. Not really. What do we actually know? For practical purposes, we are collections of tiny particles. Quarks form the centers of atoms. Gluons help hold them together. Electrons allow atoms to remain stable and connect into molecules. Many other forces work together to create the material world. That is ordinary matter. Living matter is more complicated. People still argue over the exact line between chemistry and life. Carbon is clearly important, but saying it involves carbon does not explain how dead material became something that could eat, reproduce, suffer, and think. At some point, simple compounds formed structures that could copy themselves. Cells developed. Those cells divided, changed, combined, and became more complex. Eventually, life produced brains and nervous systems. The same basic electrical behavior that helps hold matter together began directing living bodies. Then, after an almost impossible amount of time, something changed. Life went from reacting to the world to being aware that it was reacting. The reaction remained, but now there was an observer watching it happen. Wonderful, that may have been where everything went wrong. Awareness became consciousness. Consciousness became sentience. Sentience became the universe's greatest mistake. We gained the ability to understand our own useless position. We became painfully aware of ourselves. Thank you for that. Where was I? I think I passed the exit several miles ago. Sentience, or consciousness. Consciousness is awareness. Sentience adds feeling. It is not only knowing that you exist, but knowing that your existence can hurt. So what is sentience? If awareness is only a complicated pattern of neural activity processing sight, sound, hunger, pain, and memory, when did it become more than a biological program? When did a simple set of reactions become a learning system? When did that system begin to know itself? Perhaps enough neural activity gathered inside sufficiently developed creatures until the electrical signals formed a harmony. That harmony created what we call thought. Maybe every thought remains predetermined by causes that began long before we were born. Free will probably does not exist, by the way. That is another subject. How real is sentience? Are humans arrogant enough to believe our form of awareness is the highest one possible? Who are you, truly? Are you a collection of particles? Are you a harmony of electrical signals? That may answer what you are rather than who you are, but perhaps there is no real difference. Maybe what describes the collection, while who describes the illusion of an individual. But how important is the individual when the thing it belongs to is a self-replicating system built from the same basic parts, driven mainly to continue its own existence? What does individuality mean? Imagine a hive mind made of millions of separate bodies, all connected to one central awareness. Most people would say it was a single being despite the physical distance between its parts. We are not a hive mind, right? Of course not. We are only a social species with shared needs, instincts, and fears. We are biologically pushed to depend on the group, help those who support it, and reject those who threaten its structure. Wake up, sheep. No, I am joking. We are all individuals. Say it with me. We are all no. We are an enormous mass of atomic nonsense, held together by the most complicated rules the universe could invent. Every body is controlled by a storm of electrical activity that may somehow allow us to exist in the present and understand that we are doing so. Wherever you are now, this is your moment. The exact point in space and time that contains your present existence. You will never occupy it again. Hello, are we really doing another greeting? After everything I said about selfishness, am I going to make you sit through more self-indulgent, fake intellectual nonsense? Yes, I am. You do not mind, do you? I am enjoying myself. It is rare for me to exist without planning every movement or questioning every thought. Right now, I can simply let the words come. It is usually so loud inside my head. This small moment of relief may be the last one I ever know. That is all right. There is still so much ahead, so much to discover. We spend our lives searching. We search for lost things, and new things. We search for ourselves because we believe knowing ourselves will help us understand others. Most of all, we search for meaning. Purpose is an invisible prize hidden somewhere beneath the body. But where does an idea live? When does it live? Is an idea inside us? When we understand something, that understanding exists as information held in patterns of activity inside the brain. A mind is a biological storage system, not entirely different from the digital device displaying these words. Ideas live inside human beings, but perhaps we do not create them. Maybe information already exists within the possible structures of the universe, and we merely discover it. Cosmically born information. That sounds dramatic. Too dramatic? I like it. We are not the creators of information. We are collectors, curators, caretakers. Every possible idea may have always existed as a possible arrangement of matter and energy. Every combination has an outcome shaped by the rules of reality. What about quantum chance? Infinity may turn even probability into certainty. Given endless possibilities, every possible event occurs somewhere or sometime. Even purpose can be reduced to physical causes. A person chooses actions that release the chemicals associated with satisfaction. The action varies according to experience, memory, conditioning, interests, and desire. We call the result meaning. It may only be neurochemical comfort. Human beings crave balance. Serotonin, dopamine, noradrenaline, and many other chemicals shape every emotional experience we have. Among them, two are closely tied to attachment: oxytocin and vasopressin. Sex hormones influence desire. Other chemicals drive attraction, energy, and reward. Oxytocin and vasopressin help create the bonds we call familial, romantic, and platonic love. Attachment is the glue holding humanity together, while humanity tries endlessly to tear itself apart. We can even feel for people we have never met. Space, language, culture, and time separate us, but we still recognize their fear and pain. We create emotional threads across impossible distances. Those threads lead us back to one another. Human attachment is the reason our species survived. It may be the only reason it will continue. Love is hope. If that is true, hatred is despair. Hatred divides. It destroys hope. Nothing is more tragic than a group that has forgotten it belongs together. The farther we move apart, the more dangerous our condition becomes. It is a sickness of the heart. We fail to see what we truly are. One, from our earliest ancestors to you and me, through every age of suffering and achievement, humanity has always been one living story. We are made of the same material. We think in similar patterns. We love in similar ways. We hope, cry, desire, and fear. We all struggle through life with whatever strength and knowledge we have. Why do we insist on division? Love is beautiful. I knew love once. It was not calm or simple. It was a wild flame, passionate and unstable, fighting against the wind that eventually became too strong. Two flames that join may fade together. Even when they become ash, the ash remains mixed. One, there is comfort in thinking that everything began together. The material inside us came from ancient stars. After expansion, fire, formation, destruction, and impossible stretches of time, those elements gathered on this small planet. The odds seem absurd. Long after we are gone, stars will die. Matter will spread. The universe may become cold and still. Then everything will be one again. Forever, the violent birth of galaxies and stars created the chemicals we now treat as ordinary. Cosmic dust formed planets, oceans, cells, bodies, and minds. We are part of the universe watching itself. We are existence, experiencing existence. Our awareness is the universe congratulating itself. Maybe it became bored. Maybe it wanted to see what all the noise was about. So it grew eyes. It created a way to know, act, and be. Why would the universe need separate observers? Why could it not create a vast electromagnetic harmony and become aware of itself directly? That would be ridiculous, would it not? 0-point energy. What? 0-point energy. The energy that remains even when everything else has been removed. Even at absolute zero, even inside what should be an empty vacuum, quantum fields continue to move. Virtual particles appear and vanish. Waves continue beneath the silence. Yes, God, now you are revealing the ending too early. Still, it is fascinating. There may be no such thing as true nothingness. Even where nothing exists, something remains. Particles, waves, a permanent electromagnetic harmony pulsing through reality. A harmony containing other harmonies. Order often appears inside chaos when enough time and possibility exist. Are we a smaller version of the universe's structure? A system born from a system born from itself? Perhaps I need to correct what I said. Maybe humanity is not the universe watching itself. Maybe we are its runaway child. We escaped the uncertainty of the quantum world, became physical, and dreamed of being something greater. What have we done with that freedom? Was physical existence worth the effort? Would you recommend it? It is a decent place for a weekend. I might return if the weather is good. The crowds are terrible, though. Wait, hello again, my friend. This has become our little tradition. What a wonderful circle of words we have created. My endless nonsense and your endless patience come together like the beautiful voice of a school child being stabbed in the foot. That is a strong image. The mind can build entire scenes from a simple suggestion. Some minds are more colorful than others. Have you ever imagined driving off the road and hitting a tree? The imagination is strange. People say its only limit is itself, but imagination is built from what we already know. How can we picture something truly beyond our ability to understand? Every new idea is made from pieces of older ones. Imagination is a cage containing every possible rearrangement of familiar things. Knowledge gives us more pieces, which makes the cage larger. That creates a strange circle. 0-point energy. Be quiet. It is a strange, unpleasant circle. I want to ask you something. Where are you right now? There is nothing suspicious about the question. It is only a thought. Perhaps I should ask when you are. Not this again. After all that nonsense about when an idea exists, yes, I have no shame. Space-time is difficult. Put that on a shirt. We experience 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time. When you imagine yourself inside that system, perhaps you see a single point moving through a 3-dimensional world while the entire world travels forward a long time. Or perhaps time moves through us, carrying everything toward the still ocean at the end of the universe. Is time a force? Can it be measured, controlled, or used? The truth may be less elegant. Time is change. Change is time. We measure time by observing changes in a system. A clock changes position. A body grows older. A planet moves. An atom vibrates. But change requires moments in which one state can become another. Time and change depend on each other. At absolute zero, Particles should stop moving. In a perfect vacuum, there should be nothing available to change. Still, time remains. 0-point energy. Obviously, space may be the foundation on which reality sits. Time may simply be the possibility of change. When stars die and matter spreads evenly through the universe, temperatures may eventually become equal everywhere. Without differences in heat or energy, there will be no useful change. Heat death. If difference creates possibility, removing difference removes possibility. Without possibility, there is no change. Without change, there is no time. The universe becomes a frozen, timeless state. Except it does not. You are no fun. Even after heat death, quantum noise may remain. Virtual particles may still appear in the darkness, a whisper from the universe. The deterministic world is loud, but beneath it, the quantum realm continues to sing. It moves in strange wave patterns without caring whether anything is listening. Can you hear it? A kind of cosmic ringing, a sound that becomes noticeable only when every other sound is gone. I know something like that. It follows me through sleepless nights, a screaming presence at the edge of thought, a ghost that pushes, questions, and uses me. I silenced them once. Love showed me how. On an unrelated subject, there have been ideas about quantum behavior in the human brain. Some people believe consciousness may involve processes stranger than ordinary neural signals. They imagine particles exchanging information through quantum connections. If consciousness depends partly on a quantum system, the possibilities are unsettling. Have you ever shared a connection with someone that seemed to go beyond words? Have you known what another person was thinking before they spoke? Have you both said the same thing at the same time? Have you thought about someone immediately before they called? Perhaps that is intuition. Perhaps similar brains react similarly to the same situation. But what about shared hallucinations? How can two altered minds sometimes report the same impossible thing? Certain drugs can create powerful delusions. Scopolamine, atropine, and other substances connected to the nightshade family can destroy a person's ability to separate imagination from reality. Some users claim they learned things they should not have known. Science rarely treats such claims seriously. I have experienced it myself. Was it only a broken mind creating false meaning? Almost certainly. I am not going to pretend otherwise. Do not take drugs. Children, he is right, you know. Nature can be cruel, but human beings have created substances far worse than anything growing naturally from the earth. Legal weed, they called it. It was not weed. It was a horror show. There was a light. I can still see it. It was impossibly bright, like a star collapsing inside my skull. Looking at it caused unbearable pain, but turning away felt like tearing myself from the face of God. Then came the sound. A high metallic tone surrounded by an endless orchestra of strings grinding against one another. They pulled at reality. They opened it. That sound still follows me while I write. I feel it now. But I learned how to cover it. So why will they not stop screaming? Why will they not stop? Hello, friend. May I call you that? Despite the distance between us, I feel as though we know each other now. You do not know the events of my life, and I know nothing about yours. But perhaps honest conversation can reveal more than a list of facts. A person is shaped by experience, but a person is not only experience. Knowing someone requires going deeper. What can you tell me about myself? I wonder what image has formed in your mind. Everyone carries a different version of every person they meet. Even those closest to us may never see the whole truth. Do you imagine me as clean and organized? Or am I untidy? Am I young? Am I old? Have I been honest with you? Have I lied from the beginning? Am I kind? Am I lost? Do I prefer cats or dogs? Do I like sweet food? Have we made a terrible mistake? What is my favorite color? I can at least answer one question. I like cats and dogs equally, although cats are easier to care for. Do not argue with me. I may never know what version of me exists inside your mind. How well do you think you know me? I feel that I know something about you. How? You found this document. That alone suggests you search beyond whatever the world places directly in front of you. You look through the endless piles of popular entertainment and discover the wonderful and terrible things hidden underneath. Perhaps you enjoy both for different reasons. You have continued reading, which means something here interested you. You may care about questions concerning reality, knowledge, consciousness, or existence. Or perhaps you are only wondering where this is going. You are curious. I like that. My conclusion is simple. You are patient, independent, curious, and willing to explore ideas that other people may ignore. Am I wrong? That is possible. Still, I doubt someone completely uninterested would have tolerated me for this long. These are basic guesses made by someone who has spent a lifetime being treated as if no one should listen to him. You learn to study people from a distance. You learn to assume that is all right. Where are you? Right now? Where are you reading these words? Are you sitting at a computer? Are you lying in bed? Are you hiding in the bathroom while pretending to do something important? Are you traveling? Are you eating lunch? Are you sitting on a couch while a forgotten video continues playing in the background? Wherever you are, you probably are not reading this aloud. Are you? What does my voice sound like inside your mind? Is it your voice? Your inner voice? Your real voice? Human vocal cords are complicated. The sound we make aloud rarely matches the voice we hear inside ourselves. The internal voice can be a friend or an enemy. It can encourage us or insult us. It can help organize a confusing world. It can also produce whatever this rambling mess has become. Sometimes it helps us understand things when the world outside is too loud. Do you have an inner voice? Apparently, some people do not. I still find that difficult to imagine. What would it feel like to live with internal silence? It sounds peaceful. Are you one of those people? What is thought like for you? People without a constant internal narrator still think, of course. Some describe thought through images, feelings, concepts, or movement in the mind's eye. That is fascinating. I used to have a powerful visual imagination. Anything I imagined appeared with perfect detail. I could build familiar places or create entirely new worlds. As a child, I had dreams so clear they felt identical to waking life. Inside those dreams, I controlled everything. My real life was small and isolated among the trees, but my dreams carried me anywhere. I saw strange and beautiful places beyond the edge of my understanding. I experienced ordinary things that my real life could not provide. I often dreamed about the ocean. I loved watching waves roll and fold. Invisible forces moved water across enormous distances until each wave reached the shore and ended in one final display of power. There was something beautiful in that destruction. The wave used everything it had and then disappeared. I cannot imagine those scenes anymore. My mind used to be an open window filled with light. Now there is only darkness covered by chaotic static. Colorless shapes move through it. Vague images rise and vanish before I can understand them. The noise inside my mind attacks every attempt to see. All I have left is the voice. My voice. Is it mine? I have forgotten what it feels like to be separate from the constant storm of thought. I do not know where I exist within it. This is me. This is me. This is me. It is all me. It is also more than me. I cannot find the correct words. I am tired. It hurts. I want to sleep. We are not finished. Peace is not given to weak things. Not yet. Soon, when did it begin? I cannot remember. I used to be only myself. Then there was me and there was I. One was the body, reacting without awareness. The other was the conscious observer watching from inside. Now it is not that simple. I do not think I ever understood myself completely, but at least I once believed there was one person to understand. Now I observe different versions of myself through separate, unfocused lenses. Each one sees a different truth. When I combine all the pieces that may belong to me, I think I like the result. Would you like to know me? Do I make you uncomfortable? Do I interest you? Do I seem cruel? Would I make promises I could not keep? Am I a saint? A monster? A shadow? Would you like to hear how I survived the lonely, exhausting horror of this world? Would you like to hear how I became complete through strength and self-reliance? How I discovered harmony beneath the endless storm? How I escaped hell and became a better person? A better human? A better version of myself? Would you like to know how I found meaning despite the impossible emptiness of existence? I cannot lie to you. I did not. Who are you? I fell. What are you? Nothing in this world caught me, though some people tried. You are nothing. It was not their fault. You are everything. I cannot remember why I am here. What do we want? You do not matter. What can be gained? You matter to me. Where does this path end? You matter to us. What is the purpose of all this noise? It crawls through my mind like insects with needle legs. It scratches, it digs, it tears us apart. Every moment divides what remains of me into smaller pieces. Ourself. I want to sleep. We want to sleep. I am always afraid. I hate being afraid. It can stop. Please help me. I am sorry. Hello, friend. We found you. Can you hear it yet? No? Give it time. It will not hurt. I promise. Story 2. I never thought I was the kind of person who could get lucky anymore. That sounds dramatic, I know, but the previous year had been one of those terrible periods when everything in your life starts falling apart at the same time. Nothing completely collapsed at first. It all just began to shake, little by little, until I could no longer pretend things were going to fix themselves. My job cut my hours without warning. My girlfriend cheated on me and then left as though I had been the one who ruined the relationship. I spent nearly all the savings I had built up, convincing myself that the situation was temporary. It was not temporary. By the time I started looking for a new place to live, almost everything I owned could fit inside a duffel bag. I had a mattress topper, a few clothes, some basic kitchen items, and a laptop with a cracked hinge that only stayed open if I balanced it against something. That was when I found the listing. It had been posted in a small online housing group for our town. The town was one of those expensive rural places that tried very hard to pretend it was not rural. There were boutique coffee shops sitting beside farm supply stores. Luxury apartment buildings overlooked empty fields. Wealthy people moved there because they wanted peace and quiet, but they still wanted expensive restaurants and grocery delivery. The ad was short. Room for rent. Clean, quiet, no drama. $300 flat. Utilities included. I read it 3 times. $300 for a room in that building made no sense. Studio apartments in the same area cost 3 times that amount, sometimes more. Even a bad room in a crowded house usually cost twice as much. I assumed it was a scam. Still, I sent a message. The owner replied within 10 minutes. His name was Daniel. He told me he owned the apartment, but traveled often for work. He preferred having another person around so the place would not sit empty. He said money was not his main concern. What he wanted was stability. He also mentioned that he had experienced problems with roommates before, but he was willing to try again if he found the right person. We agreed to meet that same evening at a brewery downtown. Daniel did not look like a scammer. He appeared to be in his mid-30s. He was clean-cut, neatly dressed, and soft-spoken. He was the kind of man who carefully folded a napkin after using it instead of crushing it into a ball. He asked normal questions. What did I do for work? Did I smoke? What were my hobbies? How long did I plan to stay? Was I usually quiet? He listened closely to every answer. He did not interrupt or look at his phone. At the time, I thought that made him polite. Later, I realized he was studying me. When I asked why the rent was so cheap, he gave a small shrug. Peace of mind, he said. Money isn't the issue. Stability is. I should have thought that answer was strange. I did not. I was too desperate to care. The apartment was nicer than anywhere I had ever lived. It was on the top floor of the Riverstone building, one of the most expensive apartment complexes in town. The ceilings were high and angled. The hallway outside was always quiet. The floors were clean enough to reflect the lights, and the whole place was decorated in soft, neutral colors. It looked like a model apartment that had never been lived in. The first thing I noticed was the walls. Several sections of the hallway had a slightly different texture from the rest. Most people would not have noticed. You had to look carefully and stand at the right angle, but the patches were there. The repairs were neat and professionally painted. Still, the light reflected differently from those sections. Daniel noticed me looking. A pipe burst last year, he explained. It was an insurance nightmare. They had to replace some of the drywall. He said it casually, but the answer came quickly. Almost too quickly. It sounded rehearsed. Then he explained the rules. He did not call them rules. He called them house boundaries. There were no guests allowed. I was not supposed to touch the walls or open the utility closet unless there was an emergency. If I planned to stay out past midnight, I had to send him a message. The apartment needed to remain clean. When he said clean, he meant spotless. No pets were allowed. If I smelled anything strange, it was probably the plumbing. I should tell him and let him handle it rather than trying to fix it myself. None of the rules sounded completely insane. They were strict, but I needed cheap rent more than I needed freedom, so I agreed. Living with Daniel was calm, almost too calm. He was tidy, quiet, and extremely predictable. Some days I barely heard him moving around the apartment. He said he worked from home as a consultant, though he never explained what kind of consulting he did. His office door remained closed most of the time. He never had visitors. He never seemed to receive personal letters or packages, only plain envelopes and advertising mail. There were no family photographs anywhere in the apartment, no pictures from vacations, no framed graduation photos, no childhood memories. The walls held only simple abstract prints, the kind people buy in matching sets to fill empty space. The refrigerator was arranged like a diagram. Labels faced forward. Expiration dates were visible. Every shelf had a clear purpose. If something began running low, Daniel replaced it immediately. Sometimes I noticed that the brand had changed. One week, the milk would be from one company. The next week, it would be from another. The same thing happened with cereal, eggs, and cleaning products. I assumed he bought whatever was on sale. He vacuumed twice a week. He wiped the baseboards. He cleaned the doors, handles, and cabinets. He also cleaned the walls. Actually, that is not completely true. He wiped certain parts of the walls. He paid special attention to the patched sections in the hallway. That detail became important later. At the time, I thought he was simply obsessed with cleanliness, a germaphobe. One of those people my grandfather would have called a neat freak. For nearly a month, I followed the no guests rule. Not because I respected Daniel's boundaries. I was afraid of losing the room. Then one night, I met a woman at a bar downtown. Her name was Mara. She wore a silver ring on her right hand. A turquoise stone sat in the center, and one edge of the stone was slightly chipped. I remember it clearly because she kept twisting the ring while she talked. She was not from town. She was only staying in the area for a few weeks because of work. We got along almost immediately. She was funny, easy to talk to, and had the kind of confidence that made you feel comfortable around her. At some point, I told her I lived with a roommate. He's pretty chill, I said. That was the first lie I told her. We eventually returned to the apartment. I convinced myself it would be fine because Daniel was usually out late on certain nights. I had never asked what he did during those hours. He would sometimes leave after dinner and not return until after midnight. When Mara stepped inside, she looked around. "This place is nice," she said. "It doesn't look like two guys live here." I laughed and explained that my roommate was very particular about cleanliness. We ordered food and sat on the couch, searching through streaming options. Mara and I had discovered that we both enjoyed true crime documentaries, so when Netflix recommended one, we decided to watch it. The documentary was about an unidentified serial offender operating in several upstate counties. The media had given him the name the Vacancy Squatter. I joked that it sounded like the title of a cheap horror movie. According to the documentary, the killer targeted houses whose owners were away on long vacations. He would break into the homes and secretly live inside them for weeks, sometimes months. When the owners returned, the houses appeared almost unchanged. However, small differences were sometimes noticed. Groceries had been replaced with different brands. Furniture had moved by a few inches. Objects were placed in slightly different positions. In some cases, the owners later discovered fresh drywall patches that had not been there before they left. The documentary suggested that the killer targeted sex workers and other women who could disappear without receiving immediate attention. Several women had gone missing in different counties. At first, the disappearances were not connected. Then, investigators began noticing similar details around the properties where the women had last been seen. One homeowner had also disappeared after supposedly leaving for an extended trip. The authorities were still looking for the killer, but the documentary did not provide much solid proof. It felt more like speculation than a complete investigation. After it ended, Mara and I debated whether all 8 deaths and disappearances were truly connected. She believed one person was responsible. I argued that the cases might be separate incidents that had been grouped together to make the documentary more exciting. Mara nudged me with her elbow. "Imagine watching this in a stranger's apartment," she said. "You're paranoid," I told her. She stood and said she needed to use the bathroom. A moment later, I heard tapping in the hallway. My heart jumped. I turned and saw Mara standing beside one of the patched walls. She was knocking on it, with her knuckles, her tongue sticking out playfully. Then she tapped it again. Her expression changed. "Why does that sound hollow?" she asked. I froze. Daniel's rules immediately came back to me. Do not touch the walls. Do not tamper with the utility closet. But Mara was right. The wall sounded hollow, not like normal drywall with insulation behind it. It sounded like there was empty space on the other side. Daniel's bedroom door opened. I had never seen him move so quickly. 1 second, the door was closed. The next, he was standing in the hallway. His face was blank. He did not look angry. He did not look surprised. He did not even look confused. There was simply nothing in his expression. "Who is this?" he asked calmly. I began apologizing immediately. I told him I thought he would be out. I said I did not believe bringing someone over for a few hours would cause any harm. Mara gave him an uncomfortable smile. "I was just going to the bathroom," she said. She walked past him and continued down the hall. Daniel did not watch her leave. He kept his eyes fixed on me. For the first time, I noticed something different in his stare. His eyes were not cold. They were calculating. "I don't like unpredictability," he said softly. "It disrupts structure." I promised it would never happen again. He gave a small nod. "It won't," he said. Then he stared at me for another second before returning to his room and closing the door. Mara came back a few minutes later. "Well, he's Mr. Sunshine, isn't he?" she whispered. The atmosphere had become uncomfortable, so I tried to change the subject. Earlier, Mara had mentioned that she loved old objects and vintage items. I told her I owned an old pocket watch that had belonged to my grandfather. Her expression brightened. I said I would go find it. She smiled, lifted her beer, and took a sip while I headed to my bedroom. It took longer than I expected. I searched through my duffel bag, opened drawers, and looked through a small box of belongings. Eventually, I found the watch under a pile of clothes. When I returned to the living room, I stopped halfway down the hall. Mara was gone. Her purse was no longer on the counter. Her jacket was missing from the chair. At first, I felt stupid, then confused. I checked my phone. There was no message. I walked into the living room. Daniel was sitting on the couch as though nothing had happened. "She left," he said without looking at me. "What?" She said she needed to get some rest. She has work early tomorrow. That did not make sense. She didn't seem like she wanted to leave. Daniel sighed. "Dude, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think she wanted to tango with your mango, if you understand what I mean." It was the longest sentence I had ever heard him say. I had not even known he was capable of speaking like that. He shrugged and turned to meet my eyes. "Sorry for ruining your night. Some people avoid confrontation. Don't take the rejection too hard, buddy. I do not know why, but his words embarrassed me. Maybe because they made me feel unwanted. Maybe because part of me thought he was right. I sent Mara a message. Then another. She did not reply. I did not know her last name. I did not know exactly where she was staying. By morning, I had convinced myself that she had ghosted me. People did that all the time, right? About a week later, I noticed a smell. I had been working overtime, including 2 overnight shifts. When I finally returned to the apartment, the smell hit me as soon as I opened the door. It was not strong enough to identify. It was faint, but noticeable. Sweet, metallic, heavy. At first, I assumed the trash needed to be taken out. Then I thought it might be the plumbing. After that, I wondered whether a rat or another animal had died inside the walls. Daniel's behavior had changed as well. He seemed happier than usual. That might sound harmless, but with Daniel, any sudden emotion felt unusual. He welcomed me home and asked how work had been. He listened while I complained about the overnight shifts. When I mentioned the smell, he said the old pipes sometimes reacted badly to humidity. He promised to contact maintenance. He also said they had checked the same problem before. When I returned from another overnight shift, the smell had faded. A few days later, it came back stronger. That was when I noticed a new patch in the hallway. The paint looked fresh. It had been blended almost perfectly with the surrounding wall. I could not remember seeing it before. I assumed the maintenance workers had found the source of the problem and repaired the wall. Then something even stranger happened. A woman approached me outside my workplace. She appeared to be in her mid-30s. Her eyes were tired, and she held a printed photograph in one hand. "Do you live at the Riverstone building?" she asked. I hesitated. "Yes," I said cautiously. She held out the photograph. It showed a man who looked almost exactly like Daniel. However, the man in the picture was slightly heavier and appeared a little older. "This is my brother," she said. "Have you seen him?" "I live with Daniel," I replied. The woman's face turned pale. "My brother's name is Daniel." I laughed nervously. "Yeah, that's my roommate's name, too." She stared at me. "My brother hasn't answered his phone in 2 months." Something tightened inside my stomach. I told her she must be mistaken. She asked which apartment I lived in. I refused to give her the number. As far as I knew, she could have been dangerous or unstable. I had no proof that she was telling the truth. She begged me to ask Daniel to contact her. She said she missed him. Their father was terminally ill, and the family desperately wanted Daniel to come home. That night, I asked my roommate about the woman. Daniel sighed as though the subject irritated him. "Family drama," he said. "My sister exaggerates. I've been keeping my distance." He gave me a gentle smile. "Don't let unstable people shake you." I wanted to believe him. So, I did. The smell grew worse after that. It became thicker and stayed in the apartment longer. Daniel began lighting scented candles in the hallway. He cleaned more aggressively. He wiped the walls several times a day. Then one morning, he told me he was going to visit family in another state. He packed a small bag. That night, he left quietly. He did not come back. 1 week passed. Then another. Rent was approaching, so I sent him a message asking whether he planned to return. I also asked whether he had left money for his share of the payment. He did not answer. A 3rd week passed. The smell did not fade. It became stronger. I called a friend and explained that my roommate appeared to have abandoned the apartment and left me with the rent. I asked whether I could stay with him for a while because the smell was becoming unbearable. Between Daniel's sister appearing and Daniel disappearing, the entire situation felt wrong. I decided to pack. While pulling my bed frame away from the wall, I dropped my phone. It slid beneath a loose floorboard. I knelt and reached for it. The board lifted much more easily than it should have. Underneath, I found clear plastic sheeting. There was duct tape. A small object was trapped in the corner. Silver metal, a turquoise stone. One edge was chipped. Mara's ring. My hands became cold. A thin ringing filled my ears like pressure building behind my eyes. I stood too quickly and struck my head against the bed frame. I barely noticed the pain. I turned toward the wall behind my bed. I do not know what I expected to see. Blood, a dark stain, some obvious sign of what had happened. Instead, the wall looked normal. Too normal. The paint was smooth. It appeared slightly shinier than the rest of the room, but only because I was staring closely. I stepped forward. I tapped the wall with my knuckles. The sound was wrong. It did not make the dull thud of drywall filled with insulation. It echoed. Hollow. I pressed harder. The smell reached me immediately. It was not overwhelming, like an exposed body. It was thick, sweet, and metallic. It was close. Right there. Behind the place where my head had rested every night for the past month. I stumbled backward and gagged. Mara's ring was still clenched in my hand. I ran to the utility closet. The closet smelled strongly of cleaning chemicals, but there was something older underneath that scent, something metallic and damp. Shelves covered the back wall. Bottles of bleach were arranged neatly beside contractor-grade garbage bags. There were replacement light fixtures still sealed in their boxes. Behind, a plastic storage container. I found tools that did not belong with ordinary apartment supplies. A hacksaw, a rubber mallet, a short-handled sledgehammer, heavy-duty shears. None of them were dusty. None of them looked old. I still do not know why I carried the hammer back to my bedroom. I told myself I only needed to look. I would make a small hole and prove I was imagining things. The section of wall Mara had knocked on sounded even more wrong now that I was truly listening. Too hollow, too thin. The first strike barely damaged it. The second broke through the drywall with a dull cracking sound. White dust fell onto my shoes. I slowly widened the hole. I moved carefully, almost as though I were afraid of waking something sleeping on the other side. When the opening was large enough, I pulled out my phone and switched on the flashlight. The light passed through a thin layer of insulation. Then, it reached plastic. Clear plastic had been stretched tightly around something behind the wall. For a moment, my mind refused to understand what I was seeing. The plastic moved slightly as air entered through the hole. Then, an eye rolled toward the light. It was not wide open. It did not blink. It was cloudy and pressed against the plastic, but it was looking directly at me. I do not remember leaving the room. My next clear memory is standing in the hallway while waiting for the police. I stared at the hole in the wall and thought about the documentary. I thought about the hollow sound. I thought about Mara laughing as she tapped the wall. The police arrived in less than 10 minutes. I must have sounded completely hysterical during the emergency call. Somehow, they understood the most important thing I had said. There are bodies in the walls. One officer entered my bedroom and knocked against the damaged wall. The sound was wrong. They cut farther into it. The first large section of drywall fell inward like thin paper. The smell that escaped made one of the officers turn away immediately. They found Mara first. Her body had been folded carefully. She was wrapped in clear plastic and fitted inside the wall cavity like insulation. Her hair was still tied back the same way it had been on the night she disappeared. The finger where she had worn the ring had a pale indentation around it. The ring itself remained in my hand. I did not see much after that. The officers took me into the hallway and sat me on the floor. They asked questions, but I could barely understand them. When investigators opened the other patched areas in the apartment, they found another body. There were 2 victims in total. The second body belonged to the man from the photograph the woman had shown me outside work. The real Daniel. He had been hidden inside the apartment longer than Mara. The man I had been living with was not Daniel. He had killed Daniel, taken his identity, and moved into his life. The space behind my bed was where he had placed Mara. There were several other patched sections in my bedroom. The police opened them as well. No more bodies were inside. But they discovered something worse. The insulation had been removed completely from one section. The empty area between the wooden supports had been cleaned and measured precisely. Clear plastic was already stapled into place. The space had been prepared for another body. On one of the wooden beams, someone had written a single word in pencil. The handwriting was small, neat, and controlled. Soon, I do not remember vomiting, but the officers told me I did. They asked how long I had lived there. They asked when I had met the man pretending to be Daniel. They wanted to know whether I had noticed anything unusual. I told them everything. The strange rules, the walls, the documentary, Mara disappearing, the sister with the photograph, the smell, the different grocery brands, every small detail that had seemed meaningless until it was too late. Investigators believed the killer murdered the real Daniel first. He took his identification, gained access to his bank accounts, and used his name to control the apartment. He became Daniel. They believed he rented the spare room to me to make his false identity appear more believable. I helped pay the bills. I received mail there. I spoke to neighbors. If anyone asked whether Daniel lived in the apartment, I could honestly say yes. I was an alibi with a toothbrush in the bathroom. One detective told me predators like him often depend on structure, routine, control, then, over time, escalation. Mara had disrupted his routine. Or perhaps I had. Maybe he had planned to kill me next. Maybe that empty space behind the wall had been prepared for someone else. The detective said the killer left before finishing. I still hear those words. Left before finishing. I moved out that same week. I did not take much with me. Most of my belongings had been placed in evidence bags anyway. I no longer stay in one place for very long. I do not hang pictures or shelves on walls. I never push furniture completely against drywall. Whenever I stay in a hotel, I knock lightly on the walls. I listen closely. I tell myself I am checking for pipes or neighboring rooms. But I know what I am really listening for. Last week, I saw an article online about a house 3 counties away. The owners had returned after a 2-month vacation. They noticed several small interior repairs that they did not remember making. Multiple women had recently been reported missing in the area. Investigators believed someone might have lived in the property while the owners were away. No arrest had been made. I do not read those articles all the way through anymore. I do not need to. They never caught him. He is still out there. He is entering empty homes. He is changing the groceries. He is moving furniture by inches. He is building spaces behind walls. And for more than a month, I slept only a few feet away from what he had done. I shared food with him. I spoke to him every day. I believed his lies. I was his roommate. Story 3. It's strange, really, I said. Why did you drag me into this? I was sitting on a fallen log, turning a thin blade of wild grass between my fingers. The grass was damp and cold, and I kept bending it until a pale line appeared down the middle. Across from me, a fresh campfire burned between a circle of stones. The wood cracked and shifted as the flames climbed higher. Smoke rose into the evening air, changed direction, and drifted straight toward me. I coughed and waved it away. You'd think we would have grown tired of each other by now, I continued. After all these years. After all the times we've nearly torn each other apart. For a few seconds, my friend did not answer. His long blonde hair appeared through the smoke first. Then, his face came into view as he leaned to one side and brushed the smoke away with his hand. He sat across the fire from me, close enough that I could see the faint amusement in his eyes. Well, he said, you can't exactly say we have always agreed with each other. That's putting it lightly. We can't stand each other, he said, just in different ways. I smiled, despite myself. That was the kind of thing he always said. A sentence that sounded like an insult, but somehow carried affection inside it. He leaned forward and rested his arms on his knees. Besides, he continued, you're not usually the type to sit around thinking deeply about life. This seems like a random time to start. He was not wrong. The camping trip had started gently. We had spent most of the day hiking through the forest, following an old trail that became less clear the farther we went. We had complained about the weight of our packs, argued about directions, and laughed whenever one of us nearly slipped in the mud. By evening, we had found a flat clearing surrounded by tall pine trees. We set up the tent, collected wood, opened the beer, and built a fire that was larger than it needed to be. It should have been peaceful. Instead, I had begun asking questions. The mood around the campfire was slowly being poisoned by my thoughts, and I could feel it happening. The more I spoke, the heavier the air became. I looked down at the blade of grass in my hand. Well, I said, trying to sound casual, some people like to look back on their lives. I keep feeling like I have all this potential at my fingertips. Before I could finish, he interrupted me. But you think you're wasting it here, he said, with people you supposedly enjoy being around. His words replaced my embarrassment with shame. That's not what I meant. It sounded like it. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I flicked the blade of grass toward him. It floated over the fire and disappeared into the flames. He watched it burn. I'm not saying this is a waste, I told him. I'm just saying I thought my life would look different by now. Different how? I don't know. That's helpful. I mean bigger, maybe, more important. He gave me a knowing look. There it is. What? The part where sitting in the woods drinking beer with your oldest friend suddenly becomes beneath you. I shook my head quickly. No, that's not what I'm saying. My reassurance fell on playfully deaf ears. He said. Well, you have a 12-pack, 3 days of hiking, and no way to escape me until Monday. So I suggest giving your strange ideas a vacation, too. He smiled. I tried to smile back. The smoke thickened between us, making him difficult to see clearly. His face appeared and disappeared behind pale gray waves. The air smelled of pine, damp soil, and burning wood. He looked as if he wanted to move on from the conversation. Under normal circumstances, I would have let him. But things change you. Some moments become too heavy to carry quietly. As I stared at him through the smoke, I became aware of the empty plastic bottle in my jacket pocket. It pressed against my thigh. The bottle had been there since before we reached the clearing. I had forgotten about it several times during the hike, only to feel it again whenever I sat down or bent my leg. A small, hard reminder. I reached into my pocket and touched it through the fabric. The forest shifted around us. At first, it was only the trees moving in the evening wind, their branches rubbed together, producing a soft and steady whisper. Then the sound became distant. The rustling faded, and something else replaced it. A rushing noise. It came from somewhere beyond the circle of firelight. It sounded like someone running through the forest, circling us without ever getting closer. I turned my head. The trees stood close together, their trunks rising like dark pillars. The spaces between them were already filling with night. Nothing moved. When I looked back toward the fire, my friend was still watching me. I'd encourage you to make the most of moments like these, he said. The flames shifted in front of his face. For 1 second, his features seemed to bend. His smile stretched too far. His eyes looked deeper, almost hollow. Then the smoke moved, and he looked normal again. The bottle pressed against my leg. The forest began to feel unstable. I could hear liquid moving inside the bottle, even though I knew it was empty. A soft splash, then another, as if something remained trapped inside, washing against the plastic walls. I squeezed the bottle through my pocket. My breathing became shallow. "Wait," I said. My friend did not move. "I'm sorry." The words came out half as an apology and half as a demand. He sat beyond the flames with the same calm smile. Terror climbed slowly along my spine. So did guilt. The rushing sound moved closer. Pressure formed around my chest. It did not stop me from breathing or moving. Instead, it encouraged every beat of my heart, forcing me to feel each one. Thump, 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 thump. My friend tilted his head. "You know I can't do that," he said. His smile slowly disappeared. In its place came indifference. The expression disgusted me. How could he look at me that way? After everything? How could he take away the last piece of comfort I had? He had done this. He had caused all of it. Thump, 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 thump. His blonde hair began to lose its color. At first, I thought it was only the smoke mixing with it. Then gray spread from his roots to the ends, turning every strand dull and thin. The young face beneath it changed too. His cheeks sank inward. The skin around his eyes loosened. Fine lines formed around his mouth and deepened with every breath. He was becoming older in front of me. He did not seem surprised. His expression remained calm. He had done this to hurt me. That was the only explanation. He wanted me to suffer. Thump, 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 thump. The years continued to move across his face. His skin became pale and dry. His lips lost their color. The smooth shape of his cheeks disappeared, leaving sharp bones beneath loose skin. Still, he turned toward me with something childlike in his fading eyes. "I would strongly encourage you," he said, "to enjoy every moment." His voice sounded older now, rougher, but beneath it I could still hear the young man I had known. The one who had laughed too loudly in school. The one who had slept on my bedroom floor when we were children. The one who had followed me into every terrible idea. Thump, 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 thump. The entire forest went silent. The wind stopped. The branches became still. Even the fire seemed to freeze for one impossible moment, flames hanging in the air without movement. All of existence appeared to pause. My friend continued to stare at me. He was waiting, expecting I could not bear the silence. "I'm sorry," I screamed. My voice tore through the clearing. "You forced me to do it." The indifference left his face. A pitying smile replaced it. For the first time in what felt like an eternity of punishment, he spoke gently. "I know," he said, "and you still did it anyway." His body began to collapse. The dry skin on his face cracked and loosened. His hair broke apart. His clothes folded inward as the body beneath them disappeared. Within seconds, he became dust. The dust lifted above the log and joined the smoke drifting from the fire. Then he was gone. Thump, 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 thump. I was alone again. The forest returned slowly. A branch creaked somewhere behind me. Wind moved through the pine needles. An insect began chirping near the edge of the clearing. The fire cracked. I remained frozen on the log, staring at the place where my friend had been sitting. There was nothing there. No footprints. No mark on the ground. Only smoke. I looked around the campsite. The tent stood near the trees, partly open. 2 packs rested beside it. Empty beer cans were scattered around the fire. A second camping chair sat near the tent, untouched. The clearing was peaceful, patient. The forest did not judge me. It simply waited. I turned my attention back to the fire. The wood inside it had been arranged badly. Thick pieces lay across one another at uneven angles. Some were too close together, while others rested partly outside the flames. It looked like the work of someone who had very little camping experience. That was true. But the strange arrangement also helped hide what the fire was really burning. I stared at the blackened boards beneath the flames. They were not branches. They were cut pieces of wood, flat, painted in places. One still had a metal hinge attached to it. Another showed part of a carved design near the edge, the remains of something built by human hands. The weight of the plastic bottle in my pocket pulled me back to myself. I reached inside and removed it. The bottle was small and clear, stained orange by the medicine it had once contained. It had a white cap with a familiar ridged shape. I turned it between my fingers. The label had been removed, but small pieces of white paper still clung to the plastic. I knew what had been inside. I knew who the prescription had belonged to. I knew how many pills the bottle had contained before the trip. My hand trembled. For a moment, I considered putting it back into my pocket. Then, I threw it into the fire. The plastic struck one of the blackened boards and rolled toward the center. The white cap melted first. The bottle twisted and collapsed, releasing a bitter chemical smell into the air. I watched until it became unrecognizable. The sun continued to sink behind the trees. The shadows lengthened. I opened another beer. Then another. By the time darkness fully covered the forest, I had made my way through most of the pack. I told myself I was drinking to calm down. I told myself I was drinking so I could sleep. The truth was that I wanted to pull myself back toward the shores of sanity, one mouthful at a time. I sat in front of the fire and focused on the flames. Orange, yellow, blue, near the bottom. Simple colors, real colors. The alcohol softened the edges of everything. For a while, I almost believed I was only camping alone. A man in the forest, a fire, a tent, too much beer. nothing more. But the harder I focused on the fire, the more it reminded me of the reality I was trying to escape. Thump, thump, I closed my eyes. The sound remained. I know. I opened them again. The flames had weakened. Most of the wood had collapsed into glowing coals. Ash drifted through the air like gray snow. Something pale rested beneath the dying fire. At first, I thought it was a stone. Then the flames moved. A skull stared back at me from beneath the ashes. Its surface was blackened and cracked. Small flames burned inside one of the eye sockets. The jaw had fallen open, giving it the appearance of a silent scream. The brow ridge was heavy and familiar. It seemed to be staring directly into my heart. Thump, thump, I know. And you still did it anyway. The words did not come from the forest. They came from inside me. I grabbed another beer, but the can slipped from my hand and rolled into the dirt. I could not look away from the skull. The night before the trip returned to me, not as a complete memory, only pieces. My friend standing in my kitchen, his long blonde hair tied behind his head, rain striking the windows. The orange medicine bottle on the counter, my hand closing around it. His voice. You said you wanted to get away. I do. Then let's go. You don't understand. I understand more than you think. The memory changed. We were in the car. He sat in the passenger seat, watching the road. The rain had stopped, but the streets were still wet. Reflections from traffic lights moved across his face. He looked tired. You're taking too many, he said. I know what I'm doing. No, you don't. You're not my doctor. I'm your friend. That doesn't make you responsible for me. No, he said. But it means I'm not going to sit here and watch you destroy yourself. I remembered becoming angry. I remembered accusing him of judging me. He denied it. That made me angrier. We had been planning the camping trip for weeks, but I wanted to cancel. He refused to let me. He said getting away from the city might help. He said the forest might clear my head. He said he would drive if I was not feeling well. I told him I was fine. That was the lie which began everything. The memory shifted again. Morning light. The car parked near the beginning of the trail. My friend looking through my bag. The orange bottle in his hand. What are these? Give them back. How many did you take? None. You're lying. Give them back. He stepped away. You don't need these out here. They're mine. I'm holding on to them. You have no right. I'm trying to help you. The rushing sound returned in the trees. I pressed my hands over my ears. The skull remained in the fire. The next part of the memory waited behind a wall in my mind. I did not want to see it, but the forest was patient. The truth always came out eventually. We had argued near the trail. He kept the bottle in his pocket and began walking away from the car. I followed him. I demanded that he return it. He refused. I grabbed his backpack. He pulled away. I shoved him. Not hard. At least that was what I had told myself. The ground near the trail was wet and uneven. He stumbled and fell against the car. His head struck the metal frame with a dull sound. He looked surprised more than hurt. Then he pushed me. I pushed him back. He said my name. He told me to stop. He reached into his pocket, probably to give me the bottle. I thought he was trying to take something else. I struck him. Once, then again. The first time might have been panic. The second was anger. By the third, there was no excuse left. The memory broke apart. I saw his blonde hair against the ground, blood spreading into the mud. his hand opening slowly, the orange bottle rolling away. Thump, thump, I picked it up. That was the part I remembered most clearly. Not helping him, not checking his breathing, not calling for help. The bottle. I put it into my pocket. He was still alive. I knew that now. He had moved. His fingers had curled against the ground. A soft sound escaped his throat. I could have called someone. I could have carried him to the car. I could have stayed. Instead, I dragged him away from the trail. He had forced me. That was what I told myself. He had judged me. He had taken what belonged to me. He had pushed first. He had made me angry. I repeated those thoughts until they sounded like facts. Then I saw the abandoned structure deeper in the woods. It had once been a hunting shelter, nothing more than a few walls and a rotting roof. Most of it had already collapsed. I pulled loose boards from the structure. I carried them to the clearing. I built the fire. The strange pile of wood was not the result of inexperience. It was evidence. I had laid him among the boards before lighting them. I drank while the flames grew. I watched smoke rise through the trees. At some point, I began talking to him. At some point, he answered. The skull and the fire shifted. A piece of ash slid from its forehead. I stood up too quickly and nearly fell. No, I said. The forest gave no reply. You forced me. The fire cracked. You shouldn't have taken them. A branch snapped somewhere beyond the clearing. You shouldn't have followed me. The skull continued to stare. I backed away. The tent behind me moved in the wind. For a moment, I thought someone was inside it. A human shape pressed against the fabric, tall and thin. I could see the outline of a head. Long hair hung around its shoulders. Stop, I whispered. The shape did not move. I said, I'm sorry. The tent fabric slowly relaxed. There was no one inside. I turned toward the fire again. My friend was sitting on the opposite log. He looked young once more. His hair was blonde. His face was healthy. His eyes were clear. He held the orange bottle in one hand. You keep saying that, he said. I could barely breathe. Saying what? That you're sorry. No, you're afraid. That's not true. You're afraid of what happens when someone finds out. I shook my head. I didn't mean to kill you. But you did. You took the bottle. I tried to help. You wouldn't listen. You didn't want help. You wanted permission. The pressure returned around my chest. Thump, thump. I loved you, I said. He studied me. I know. The answer hurt more than accusation would have. Then why are you doing this? I'm not doing anything. You won't leave me alone. He looked toward the fire. I'm already gone. The skull remained beneath the flames, even while he sat across from me. Two versions of him. One alive. One burned. Both watching. I lowered myself back onto the log. What do you want? The truth. I told you the truth. No. You told me what happened. What's the difference? He leaned forward. The truth is what it means. I looked down at my hands. Dirt filled the lines of my palms. Dark stains marked my sleeves. I was angry, I said. He waited. I wanted the pills. He said nothing. I thought you were trying to control me. The forest remained still. I pushed you. His expression did not change. I hit you. The words became harder. You were still alive. He nodded once. I knew. There it was. The part I had tried not to say. I knew you were alive. My voice broke. I could have helped you. Thump, thump, but I didn't. The fire gave one final bright flare. My friend began to fade. Smoke moved through his chest. The trees behind him became visible through his body. I'm sorry, I whispered. He looked almost sad. You always are. Then he disappeared. I remained beside the dying fire until morning. I did not sleep. Whenever I closed my eyes, I heard his breathing in the mud. Whenever the wind moved through the trees, I heard his voice. The fire burned lower and lower until only red coals remained. The skull stayed visible beneath the ash. At dawn, the first light passed between the branches. Birds began calling. For a moment, the forest looked normal again. I stood and walked toward the edge of the clearing. The trail was somewhere beyond the trees. The car was waiting. The world was waiting. I could leave. I could pretend I had become separated from my friend. I could say he wandered away during the night. I could report him missing. Maybe the fire had destroyed enough. Maybe the rain would remove the rest. Maybe no one would ever know. I took one step toward the trail. Thump, thump, I stopped. And you still did it anyway. I turned back. The campfire was dead. My friend sat on the opposite log, smiling gently. I understood then that it did not matter whether anyone found out. It did not matter whether the police came. It did not matter whether I escaped the forest. He was already inside every quiet moment, inside every heartbeat, inside every excuse. I could burn the body. I could melt the bottle. I could hide the boards. But I could never destroy the part of me that knew the truth. He had tried to save me, and I had killed him for it. Story 4. I still remember that night clearly. It was cold inside the hospital, colder than it should have been. Snow was falling outside, gathering against the windows and covering the parking lot in a clean white layer. The heating system had been struggling all evening, pushing out weak bursts of warm air that disappeared almost as soon as they entered the halls. You would think that with the amount of money hospitals make, they could afford a heating system that actually worked. Instead, most of us were walking around with our jackets under our scrubs, rubbing our hands together whenever we had a free moment. The emergency department never really became quiet, but that night had slowed down enough for us to notice the cold. There was also a strange smell in the air. At first, I thought it was coming from one of the patients. Anyone who has worked in a hospital knows that certain smells become part of the job. Sweat, blood, urine, old clothing, infected wounds, chemicals, and cleaning products all mixed together until you stop noticing most of it. But this scent was different. It reminded me of a body that had been opened for examination. Have you ever stood inside an anatomy lab or a cadaver theater? I mean the kind of place where a body lies open so students can study everything hidden beneath the skin. Organs exposed, muscles pulled back, the private machinery of a human being displayed under bright lights. It is a strange experience. The world seems to have made a decision to hide all of that beneath flesh. Bones, organs, veins, and all the other wet and delicate parts are sealed away where we do not have to look at them. I have always believed they are better left hidden. At the same time, I cannot deny that the mystery of what lies beneath the skin has always pulled at me. That night was when I finally learned what really happens to some bodies. The patient arrived shortly after 2 in the morning. The paramedics pushed him through the ambulance doors at high speed. He was lying completely still on the stretcher. His skin was gray and his chest was not moving. One medic was performing chest compressions while another squeezed air into his lungs with a bag. Unknown male, one of them shouted. Found unresponsive outside a bus station. Weak pulse during transport. Lost it 2 minutes out. We moved quickly. That is what emergency staff do. There is no time for questions when someone arrives without a pulse. We pulled the stretcher into the trauma room and moved the patient onto the bed. Within seconds, staff surrounded him. The doctor took control. Continue compressions. Get access. Attach the monitor. Prepare epinephrine. His clothes were cut away. Pads were placed on his chest. Lines were inserted into his arms. A tube was pushed down his throat. Someone checked his blood sugar while another nurse searched his pockets for identification. There was nothing. No wallet, no phone, no keys, not even a loose piece of paper with a name written on it. He appeared to be somewhere in his late 30s or early 40s. He was thin, but not dangerously so. His hair was dark and cut short. There were no obvious injuries, no blood, no needle marks, and no signs that he had been attacked. His body looked strangely clean for someone who had been found outside during a snowstorm. We worked on him for almost an hour. The room became hot from the number of people inside. Sweat formed beneath my cap and ran down the side of my face. My arms hurt from taking turns with chest compressions. Again and again, the monitors showed nothing useful. We gave medication. We shocked him. We checked for a pulse. Nothing. For the first 20 minutes, everyone moved with determination. The doctor's orders were sharp and clear. The nurses answered quickly. No one looked away from the patient. After 30 minutes, the mood began to change. Hope left the room slowly. You could see it in everyone's faces. Movements became less urgent. Voices grew quieter. The doctor studied the monitor longer between each step, as though he was waiting for something he already knew would never appear. By the end, most of us understood that the man had probably been dead before he ever reached the hospital. Still, we continued. The doctor ordered one final round of epinephrine. The medication went into the line. We waited. Another pulse check was performed. The nurse pressed her fingers against the man's neck and slowly shook her head. The doctor looked at the clock on the wall. Time of death, 02:47. The room became silent. It is strange how quickly a medical emergency can end. One moment, a dozen people are fighting to save a life. The next, everyone steps back, and the person becomes a body. The charge nurse left to handle the paperwork and begin the process of locating the man's family. Other staff members removed unused supplies, wiped down surfaces, and rolled equipment out of the room. The invasive lines and airway tube remained in place. That was standard for an unidentified patient, especially one who might become part of a police or medical examiner investigation. The monitors were disconnected. The medication pumps were turned off. The defibrillator screen went dark. Despite the violence of resuscitation, our staff had been trained to treat dead patients with care. Humanity does not leave someone the moment their heart stops. We still covered them. We still cleaned them. We still handled their bodies gently. Death usually follows a pattern. Warmth leaves the body. The skin becomes pale. Muscles relax. The brain stops. The eyes lose focus. Over time, the body cools to match the room around it. This patient did not follow that pattern. 10 minutes after the doctor pronounced him dead, his skin had not cooled. In fact, he felt warmer than before. Most of the staff had already left the room. It was late enough that the flow of new patients had finally slowed. People often imagine emergency departments as constant chaos, but there are short periods, especially after midnight, when everything becomes still. The hall's quiet. The lights buzz. Someone laughs softly at the nurse's station. For a few minutes, it is possible to believe the night might end peacefully. The unidentified man was supposed to be our final serious case. I stayed in the room to help the primary nurse with post-mortem care. She was one of the most experienced nurses on the night shift. Her name was Rebecca. She had worked in emergency medicine for nearly 20 years and had the calm manner of someone who had seen almost everything. She moved around the body with careful attention. I followed behind her, handing over supplies and recording details. I was never very comfortable with that side of the job. I preferred simple, fast cases. Swab a patient's nose, start an IV, give fluids, place a breathing tube if necessary, stabilize someone and either admit them or send them home. Those were tasks with clear steps. Death was different. Death brought questions. It involved families, ethics, religion, paperwork, and emotions that could not be measured on a monitor. Whenever a case became complicated in that way, I often felt a step behind everyone else. Rebecca touched the man's arm and frowned. "He hasn't cooled off yet," she said. I looked at her. "It's only been a few minutes." "No, feel him." I placed the back of my hand against the patient's skin. He was warm, not slightly warm. "Hot." Rebecca looked toward the door. "Get a temperature." I almost laughed. "He's dead. I know what the doctor said. Get one anyway." I found a thermometer and checked. The reading appeared 103.8 degrees Fahrenheit. I checked again. The same result. Rebecca stared at the screen. "That's impossible." I tried another device, thinking the first one had failed. 103.9. His temperature was rising. Rebecca called the doctor. He had spent the last half hour writing notes, speaking to law enforcement, and trying to find information about the patient. When he entered the room, he looked exhausted and irritated. "What is it?" Rebecca showed him the temperature. He looked at the screen, then at the body. For a moment, his tired expression disappeared. His eyes widened. He stepped closer, but did not touch the patient. "How long has he been this warm?" "He never cooled," Rebecca said. The doctor stared at the man's chest. Then he left the room without another word. Rebecca and I looked at each other. "What was that?" I asked. She shook her head. Neither of us understood. I began running through possible explanations. Infection, drug reaction, equipment failure, some rare condition affecting the body after death. None of it made sense. Even if the man had arrived with a high fever, his temperature should not have continued increasing after his circulation stopped. Before I could form a useful theory, the doctor returned with an ultrasound machine. He pushed the cart into the room himself. His face had changed. He no longer looked tired. He looked afraid. He stared at Rebecca and me. "Expose the patient." She pulled back the sheet. I removed the gown from the man's upper body. "What are you looking for?" I asked. The doctor ignored me. He put on gloves, opened a bottle of ultrasound gel, and poured a thick line across the dead man's chest. The moment the gel touched the skin, we heard a faint cracking sound. It was soft at first. Then it became louder. It sounded like thin ice breaking. Small lines appeared across the man's chest. They spread outward from the gel, branching under the skin like cracks moving across glass. Rebecca stepped back. "What is that?" The doctor lifted the ultrasound probe. He did not touch the patient with his hand. He pressed only the probe against the chest. The screen filled with gray shapes. At first, I could not understand what I was seeing. An ultrasound is not a clear photograph. It shows shadows, movement, fluid, and tissue. You have to know what you are looking for. The doctor moved the probe slowly. Then something appeared beneath the ribs. A mass. It shimmered and pulsed. It was not the heart. It was too large and in the wrong position. The shape seemed wrapped in layers of tissue. It moved slowly, expanding and tightening in a rhythm that did not match any normal organ. Rebecca leaned closer to the screen. "What is that?" The doctor's face had gone pale. He removed the probe. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "The patient isn't dead." Rebecca stared at him. The doctor looked down at the body. "It hasn't been born yet." Silence filled the room. Rebecca did not move. I looked from her to the doctor, trying to understand what he meant. The only explanation that entered my mind was so ridiculous that I almost did not say it. "Are you suggesting we perform a C-section?" The doctor nodded. For a moment, I believed he had lost his mind. This was a male patient. There was no uterus. There was no pregnancy. There was no possible reason for a baby to be inside his chest. But the doctor was already moving. "We have 5 minutes," he said. "Maybe less. Call the birth center. Tell them they are getting a new admission." Rebecca continued staring at him. "What do I tell them?" "Tell them to prepare for a newborn." "From where?" The doctor looked at the dead man. "Tell them we don't know." What happened next became a storm of movement. People rushed into the room from different departments. Nurses, respiratory staff, surgical staff, and anyone with enough experience to be useful came to help. Most of them thought there had been some misunderstanding. That changed when they saw the ultrasound. No one could explain what was moving inside the man's chest. No one could say with confidence that it was a child. Still, the shape appeared to be alive. The dead patient was connected to the monitors again. The screen continued to show no heartbeat, no pulse, no brain activity. Yet, his temperature remained high. The mass beneath his ribs continued moving. The doctor and I began preparing a sterile field. It was not truly sterile. There was no time to move him to an operating room. We had to work in the trauma bay where he had died. Surgical tools were brought in. The skin was cleaned. Additional lights were aimed at his chest. Someone from the birth center stood nearby with neonatal equipment. Another nurse prepared oxygen. The doctor took the scalpel. For one final second, he hesitated. Then, he made the first cut. The man's skin opened with almost no bleeding. There should have been blood. Instead, a thick black fluid leaked from the incision. It smelled like the strange scent I had noticed earlier. The cadaver smell. The smell of something hidden too long beneath flesh. The doctor cut deeper. The cracking sound returned. The man's ribs did not behave like bone. They split apart in thin layers, peeling back like the shell of an egg. No one spoke. We widened the opening. Beneath the ribs was a smooth gray membrane. It moved as something pushed against it from inside. The doctor made another incision. Warm fluid spilled across the bed. Then we saw it. A small body wrapped in a pale sack. A baby. The child was curled tightly beneath the dead man's chest, surrounded by tissue that looked almost like a placenta. The baby moved. Tiny arms shifted beneath the sack. Someone gasped. The doctor reached inside and carefully lifted the child free. The connection between the baby and the patient was not an ordinary umbilical cord. It was a long rope of dark tissue attached near the man's heart. The cord pulsed, even though the heart beside it was still. The doctor cut it. The moment he did, the dead patient's body became cold, not gradually. Instantly, his skin turned pale. The heat vanished so quickly that mist rose from his chest. The baby was handed to the neonatal nurse. She broke open the sac and began clearing the child's airway. For several seconds, the baby did not make a sound. Everyone watched. Then, she cried. It was a strong, healthy cry. The noise filled the trauma room. Some people laughed from shock. Others began crying. I stood beside the open body, covered in black fluid, staring at the newborn girl in disbelief. There was no medical explanation for what we had done. A baby had been removed from the chest of a dead adult man. She appeared full term. She was healthy. Her skin was pink. Her breathing was normal. The child was taken to the birth center and placed under observation. The dead man remained unidentified. After the procedure, his body changed rapidly. His skin became dry and gray. His muscles tightened. Within an hour, he looked as though he had been dead for several days. The chest cavity was empty. There was no uterus, no strange organ, no structure that could have carried a child. The medical examiner was called. The hospital administration became involved. People in suits arrived before sunrise and spoke to everyone who had been inside the room. We were told not to discuss the case. We signed forms. Reports were changed. Certain details disappeared from the official record. The patient's cause of death was eventually listed as cardiac arrest with unknown origin. The emergency procedure was described as the removal of an unidentified internal mass. The baby was not mentioned in the report. No one explained why. The girl was born on February 17th, 2022. The staff named her Cindy. At first, it was supposed to be temporary. We needed something to call her, and one of the nurses suggested the name. It stayed. Cindy remained under state protection. Social workers searched for the dead man's family. They checked fingerprints, dental records, and missing person reports. Nothing matched. It was as though the man had never existed. No relatives came forward. No one claimed his body. No one could explain where he had come from. Genetic testing created more questions. Cindy's DNA did not match the dead patient. In fact, some sections of her genetic material were difficult to identify. The doctors called them unusual variations. They insisted she was human, but they avoided giving clear answers. Her checkups were normal. She ate well. She slept often. She gained weight. Every test said she was healthy. I visited her whenever I could. I told myself I was only curious. That was not true. Something about her drew me in. Maybe it was because I had been there when she entered the world. Maybe it was because the whole event had left me feeling responsible for her. Whenever I held her, she stopped crying. Her eyes followed me around the room. She seemed to recognize my voice. Months passed. Then, years. The hospital tried to bury the story, but I could never forget it.